The cigarette pressed against Elena's forearm for the third time, and she couldn't hold back the scream anymore. "Please," she gasped, her voice breaking as tears streamed down her face. "I don't know anything. I'm just a waitress. I don't know what you want from me." The man holding her down laughed, a sound like gravel scraping concrete. "A waitress who happens to work at Dante Moretti's restaurant. A waitress who sees everything, hears everything." He leaned closer, his breath reeking of whiskey and cigarettes. "Now, where does Moretti keep his shipment records?" Elena's head spun. Shipment records? She could barely keep track of the nightly specials. She'd been working at Moretti's for exactly 3 weeks, picking up shifts to pay off her mother's medical bills. The hospice care was bleeding her dry, and when a friend mentioned the upscale Italian restaurant paid twice what other places offered, Elena hadn't asked questions. She needed the money. That was all. I've never even been in the back offices," she sobbed. "I just take orders and serve food. That's all I do." Another man, this one with a scar running from his eyebrow to his jaw, grabbed her face roughly. "You expect us to believe Moretti hired some random girl out of the goodness of his heart? Nobody works for the Moretti family without being part of the family." "I'm not part of anything!" Elena's voice rose in desperation. "I applied online. I had an interview with the floor manager. I've never even spoken to Mr. Moretti. I don't even know what he looks like." The scarred man exchanged a glance with his partner. For a moment, Elena thought they might believe her. Then his expression hardened. "Then you're useless to us, which means you're a liability." The words hit her like ice water. Elena's survival instinct kicked in, and she thrashed against the ropes binding her wrists to the chair. Wait, please. If you let me go, I won't tell anyone. I don't even know who you are. I can't identify you." She was babbling now, saying anything that might keep her alive for another minute. "That's the problem, sweetheart." The first man ground out his cigarette on the concrete floor beside her. "You already know too much." The scarred man pulled out a gun. Elena's world narrowed to that single point of black metal. She thought of her mother, dying slowly in that hospice bed, waiting for visits that would never come again. She thought of the 27 years of life she'd lived, most of them spent just trying to survive, to be good, to take care of the people she loved. And this was how it ended, tied to a chair in some abandoned warehouse, murdered because she'd taken a job waiting tables. Any last words? The scarred man's finger moved to the trigger. The warehouse door exploded inward. It didn't open. It exploded, blown off its hinges with such force that it crashed into the far wall. The sound was deafening, and Elena instinctively closed her eyes against the shower of splinters and dust. When she opened them, she saw him. He stood in the doorway like something from a nightmare, or a dream. Elena couldn't decide which. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than her car. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and cold, lethal beauty. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. Dark eyes that swept the room with the calculating precision of a predator assessing its prey. Behind him, a small army of men fanned out, all armed, all moving with military precision. "Gentlemen." His voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of an Italian accent underneath. The kind of voice that could order wine at dinner, or order your execution with the same casual elegance. "You've made a grave mistake." The scarred man's face went white. "Moretti." So this was Dante Moretti, Elena's boss. The man she'd never spoken to, never seen. The man whose restaurant she'd been serving pasta and pouring wine in for 3 weeks, while completely oblivious to what he really was. What he was terrifying. "You kidnapped my employee." Moretti stepped into the warehouse, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. "You tortured her. You put your filthy hands on something that belongs to me." "We didn't know," the first man stammered. "We thought she was one of yours, that she had information." "So you thought you'd burn her until she talked?" Moretti's voice dropped to something barely above a whisper, but somehow that made it more frightening. You thought you'd put a gun to her head in my territory, and I wouldn't find out. He was moving closer now, and Elena could see details she'd missed before. The tattoo that peeked out from his collar, the ring on his right hand, heavy gold with a crest she didn't recognize, the barely controlled violence simmering beneath that expensive suit. "Boss, listen!" "I'm done listening." Moretti's hand shot out, and suddenly he had the scarred man by the throat, lifting him off his feet like he weighed nothing. "What I'm going to do now is make an example, because clearly the other families have forgotten who owns this city." He threw the man to the ground with casual brutality, then turned his attention to Elena for the first time. Their eyes met. Elena forgot how to breathe. She expected to see more of that cold violence, the same terrifying emptiness she'd seen when he looked at her captors. Instead, something shifted in his expression. His jaw tightened. His eyes traveled over her face, down to where her blouse was torn, to the burns on her forearms, the bruises already forming on her wrists from the ropes. "Get her out of here." His voice had changed, taken on a rough edge that hadn't been there before. "Carefully, someone call Dr. Russo. I want her treated immediately." Two of his men moved toward her, and Elena instinctively flinched back. "Don't touch me," she whispered. She didn't care anymore who these people were. She'd been grabbed, tied up, tortured. She couldn't handle one more person putting their hands on her. Moretti held up a hand, stopping his men. Then, to Elena's shock, he crossed to her himself, moving slowly, deliberately, like someone approaching a frightened animal. "Elena." He said her name like he'd said it before, like he knew her. "I'm going to cut the ropes. I'm not going to hurt you." "How do you know my name?" Her voice came out small, broken. "I know everything about my employees." He pulled out a knife, a wicked-looking thing that gleamed in the dim warehouse light, and very carefully, watching her face the whole time, cut through the ropes, binding her wrists. Date of birth, May 15th. Only child. Mother in hospice care at St. Mary's. Student loans from a degree in art history you've never used. 3 speeding tickets. No criminal record. He moved to cut the ropes at her ankles. "Blood type O negative. Allergic to shellfish. You take your coffee black with 2 sugars, and you've been working double shifts 6 days a week to pay your mother's medical bills." Elena's head was spinning again, but for entirely different reasons now. "Why would you know all that?" He finished cutting the last rope and straightened, sliding the knife back into his jacket. "Because I make it my business to know who works for me, especially when I personally approve every hire." "You... what? You think my floor manager makes those decisions?" One corner of his mouth lifted in something that wasn't quite a smile. "I saw your application, your resume, your references. I saw your mother's medical records when I ran your background check." He held out his hand to help her up. "I knew exactly who you were when I hired you, Elena. A good girl trying to save her dying mother. Not a spy, not a liability, just someone who needed help." She stared at his outstretched hand, her mind struggling to process what he was saying. Nothing made sense. Mafia bosses didn't personally review applications from waitresses. They didn't memorize their coffee orders. They didn't look at her with eyes that held something almost like concern. "I don't understand," she whispered. "You don't need to. Not yet." His hand remained steady, patient. "But you need medical attention. Let me help you." Elena's legs felt like water, and the adrenaline that had kept her functioning was draining away, leaving her shaky and cold. She didn't want to touch him. Didn't want to accept help from a man who was clearly as dangerous as the men who'd kidnapped her, maybe more so. But when her legs gave out, he caught her. His arms came around her, strong and steady, and instead of the violence she expected, there was only careful support. He smelled like expensive cologne and something darker, more dangerous. He lifted her like she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest. "I've got you," he murmured, and there was something in his voice that made her want to believe him. "You're safe now." Over his shoulder, Elena saw his men moving in on her captors. The scarred man was trying to crawl away. The other one was begging. "Those are burns," Moretti said without looking back at them, his voice carrying clearly through the warehouse. His arms tightened fractionally around Elena. On her arms, her shoulder. "I can see at least 4. Count them carefully." He paused at the doorway, and when he spoke again, his voice could have frozen blood. "I want each man who touched her to receive 10 burns for everyone she got. Start with cigarettes. Move to blowtorches if they pass out." Another pause. "And find out who they're working for. I want names. I want locations. I want to know who gave the order to touch what's mine." "Boss," one of his men acknowledged. "Those are burns," Moretti repeated, and now Elena could hear the rage beneath the cultured tone, like magma under ice. "Start fucking talking! By morning, I want to know everything, and I want them to wish they'd never been born." Then he carried her out into the night, and Elena's last sight of the warehouse was the scarred man's face, frozen in terror as Moretti's men closed in. The car was warm. Leather seats, tinted windows, the kind of vehicle that cost more than Elena's annual salary. Moretti settled her carefully in the back seat, then slid in beside her, leaving his men to follow in separate cars. "St. Mary's Hospital," he told the driver. "No," Elena found herself saying. Her voice was hoarse from screaming. "Not St. Mary's. My mother's there. She can't see me like this." Moretti studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. "My home. Dr. Russo will meet us there." His home. Elena should have been terrified. Instead, she felt oddly numb, like she was floating somewhere outside her own body, watching this happen to someone else. She looked down at her arms. The burns were already blistering, angry red marks against her pale skin. There were 4 of them, just like he'd said. 4 cigarette burns, and Moretti had ordered 10 burns for each one. 40 burns. Minimum. "You're going to torture them," she heard herself say. "Yes." No hesitation. No justification. Just a simple statement of fact. "They were going to kill me." "I know. You saved my life." "Yes." He was watching her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "Does that bother you?" Did it? Elena's mind felt sluggish, trying to work through the ethics of the situation. Those men had hurt her. They'd terrified her. They'd been seconds away from putting a bullet in her head. And now they were going to suffer for it. Suffer terribly. Because Dante Moretti had decided they'd crossed a line. "I don't know," she admitted. "I should say yes. I should be horrified. But I don't know." "That's honest." He reached into a compartment in the door and pulled out a bottle of water, cracking it open before handing it to her. "Drink. You're in shock." She was. Elena took the water with shaking hands and drank, the cool liquid helping to clear some of the fog from her mind. As it did, reality began to settle in. She was in a car with Dante Moretti, a man who apparently ran some kind of criminal empire. She'd been tortured because someone thought she worked for him, and now he was taking her to his home to be treated by his personal doctor. "I can't go back to the restaurant," she said suddenly. "Can I? If working there put me in danger once..." "You're not going back to the restaurant." Moretti's tone made it clear this wasn't up for discussion. "Consider your employment there terminated, effective immediately." Panic flared in Elena's chest. "But I need that job. My mother's bills will be paid." He said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. All of them. Past, present, and future. St. Mary's hospice care, medications, everything. "I'll have my accountant wire the money tomorrow." Elena's mouth fell open. "You can't just... That's hundreds of thousands of dollars." "I'm aware." "Why would you do that?" "Because you were hurt, working for me." His jaw tightened again, that flash of something dangerous crossing his face. "Because those animals put their hands on you in my territory, while you were under my protection, whether you knew it or not. Because that makes it my responsibility to make you whole. I'm not your responsibility. That's where you're wrong, Elena. He leaned closer, and she caught that scent again. Expensive cologne and danger. The moment you walked into my restaurant, you became my responsibility. Everyone who works for me is under my protection. That's the deal. That's how this works. I didn't agree to any deal. You don't have to agree. It simply is. He leaned back, his eyes never leaving her face. You're in my world now. The moment those men connected you to me, they made that choice for you. You can't go back to your old life pretending none of this exists. They'll come for you again. The words hit like a physical blow. What? Whoever sent those men, and we will find out who, now knows you exist. They know you work for me. Even if you quit, even if you disappear, they'll assume you know something valuable. His expression was grim. The only way to keep you safe is to keep you close. You're saying I'm basically a prisoner now. I'm saying I'm offering you protection. There's a difference. Is there? Elena heard her voice rising, hysteria creeping in. You're telling me I can't leave, that I can't go back to my life, that I'm stuck in your world forever because I had the bad luck to need a job. Elena. His hand caught hers, gentle but firm. The contact sent a shock through her system. Breathe. You're safe right now, in this moment. We'll figure out the rest. She wanted to pull away, wanted to scream, to cry, to demand he let her out of the car. But his hand was warm around hers, and she was so tired, and everything hurt, and for just a moment she let herself hold on. They'd reached his home. Elena had expected something dramatic, a sprawling mansion maybe, or a fortress. Instead, the car pulled into an underground garage beneath what looked like an upscale apartment building. Private entrance, private elevator. The doors opened directly into a penthouse that took up the entire top floor. It was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Modern furniture that managed to look comfortable despite probably costing a fortune. Art on the walls. Real art, the kind Elena had studied in college, the kind that belonged in museums. Despite everything, she found herself staring at a painting above the fireplace. Caravaggio, Moretti said, following her gaze. The Taking of Christ. A copy, obviously. The original is in Dublin. It's beautiful. The words came out automatically, a lifetime of art appreciation overriding her fear. The use of light and shadow. Caravaggio was a master of chiaroscuro. He was also a murderer who fled Rome after killing a man in a brawl. Moretti's lips curved in something that might have been amusement. Perhaps that's why I appreciate his work. A man in his 60s appeared from one of the side rooms, carrying a medical bag. Dr. Russo, Elena assumed. He had kind eyes and gentle hands, and within minutes he had her seated on Moretti's expensive couch, cleaning and bandaging her burns with practiced efficiency. The burns are second degree, he said to Moretti, not to Elena. Painful, but they'll heal. I'll prescribe antibiotics to prevent infection, and something for the pain. She should rest. She'll stay here tonight? Again, Moretti made it a statement, not a question. Elena opened her mouth to argue, but Dr. Russo was already nodding. Best not to be alone after a trauma like this. The shock can hit hard once the adrenaline wears off. He turned to her finally, his expression sympathetic. You've been very brave, young lady. But you're safe now. Let yourself rest. After he left, Elena sat on the couch, wrapped in bandages and borrowed clothes, one of Moretti's shirts, soft and smelling of laundry detergent and that cologne she was starting to recognize. He'd given her privacy to change, which she appreciated. Now he stood by the windows, looking out at the city lights, giving her space. Why do you care? Elena asked finally. About me, specifically. You said you review all your employees, but you don't bring them to your home. You don't pay their mother's medical bills. Why am I different? He was quiet for so long, She thought he wouldn't answer. Then he turned, and in the dim light of the penthouse, his face looked almost vulnerable. 3 weeks ago, I was reviewing applications for the restaurant. Dozens of them. Most were exactly what you'd expect. People looking for work, nothing special. Then I saw yours. He moved closer, settling into the armchair across from her. Your references were glowing. Everyone talked about how kind you were, how hardworking. But it was the essay question that caught my attention. We ask applicants why they want to work in fine dining. Most people say something about their passion for food or customer service. You wrote 3 sentences. I need this job to save my mother's life. I'll work harder than anyone you've ever hired. Please give me a chance. Elena remembered writing that. She'd been exhausted, defeated, filling out her 20th application that week. She'd been too tired to lie, to dress it up. She'd just told the truth. Most people would have found that too desperate, she said softly. Too much information. Most people aren't me. Moretti leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I looked into your situation. Your mother's diagnosis, the bills, how hard you'd been working to keep her comfortable. I saw a woman who loved someone enough to sacrifice everything, who was brave enough to be honest even when it might cost her the job. He paused. I saw someone worth protecting. So you hired me. I hired you, and I made sure you got the best shifts, the tables with the biggest tippers. I had my floor manager watch out for you, make sure no one gave you trouble. His dark eyes met hers. I've been watching you for 3 weeks, Elena. Watching you charm difficult customers. Watching you stay late to help with prep work. Watching you count your tips each night with this look of exhausted relief. He shook his head slowly. And tonight I almost lost you because I wasn't watching carefully enough. Because I didn't anticipate that my enemies would be stupid enough to target an innocent waitress. The intensity in his voice made Elena's breath catch. This wasn't just about responsibility or protection. There was something else there. Something that made her heart pound for entirely different reasons than fear. Those men, she said, changing the subject because she wasn't ready to examine what she was feeling. You said you'd find out who sent them. What happens then? War, probably. He said it calmly, like he was discussing the weather. Someone made a move against me. They'll pay for it. Their whole organization will pay for it. Because of me. Because they broke the rules. You were just the catalyst. He stood, moving to pour himself a drink from a crystal decanter. In my world, there are codes. Lines you don't cross. Hurting innocents is one of them. Targeting someone's employee without proof they're involved is another. Whoever ordered this knew they were starting something. They wanted a reaction. And you're going to give them one. Oh, yes. He took a sip of what looked like whiskey. By morning, 8 men are going to tell me everything I need to know. By tomorrow night, I'll know exactly who to kill. He said it so matter-of-factly. Elena should have been running for the door. Instead, she found herself asking, what if they don't talk? They'll talk. Everyone talks eventually. His smile was cold. But even if they don't, I have other ways of finding information. I didn't build this empire by being patient with people who cross me. Elena pulled his shirt tighter around herself. I don't belong in this world. No, he agreed. You don't. You're too good for it. Too kind. Too genuine. He set down his glass and crossed to her, kneeling so they were at eye level. But you're in it now, and I'm not letting you go. Not when you're in danger. Not when I can keep you safe. For how long? As long as it takes. His hand came up, hesitating just before touching her face. May I? The question surprised her. This man who ordered torture, who talked about war and killing, was asking permission to touch her cheek. Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. His fingers were gentle, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. You're exhausted. Let me show you to a bedroom. You need rest. He was right. Elena felt like she could sleep for a week, but as he helped her to her feet, guiding her down a hallway to a guest room that was bigger than her entire apartment, She found herself asking one more question. What happens to me after tonight? Moretti paused in the doorway, his silhouette backlit by the hall lights. That depends. On what? On whether you can learn to trust me. He met her eyes. On whether you're brave enough to stay, and on whether I can keep my promise to keep you safe. Do you always keep your promises? Always. No hesitation. Sleep, Elena. We'll talk more in the morning. He closed the door, leaving her alone in the darkness. Elena crawled into the bed, silk sheets, soft as clouds, and stared at the ceiling. Her arms throbbed where the burns were bandaged. Her wrists ached from the ropes. Her whole body felt like it had been put through a wringer. But she was alive, because Dante Moretti had torn down a door to save her. Because he'd looked at her application 3 weeks ago and decided she was worth protecting. Because somewhere in his dangerous, violent world, he'd made space for a struggling waitress who just wanted to save her mother. Elena closed her eyes, and, against all logic and reason, felt safe. She woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she tried to move her arms, and the pain brought it all flooding back. The warehouse, the torture, Moretti's rescue. Elena sat up carefully, finding a robe laid out at the foot of the bed. She wrapped herself in it, silk, of course, and ventured out of the room. The penthouse looked different in daylight, less intimidating, more like a home. She followed the coffee smell to a kitchen that was probably bigger than her entire apartment, where Moretti stood at the counter, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. He'd changed clothes, dark slacks, white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. His hair was damp, like he'd just showered. He looked almost normal if you didn't notice the gun in a holster on the counter next to the coffee maker. "Good morning," he said, sliding a mug toward her. "Black, 2 sugars." Elena accepted it, wrapping her hands around the warm ceramic. "Did you sleep?" "No." He took a sip of his own coffee. "I had work to do." "The men from last night." "Among other things." Elena didn't ask for details. She wasn't sure she wanted to know. Instead, she perched on one of the bar stools and let the coffee warm her from the inside. "What happens now?" "Now we talk." Moretti leaned against the counter, studying her. "I made some calls last night. Your mother's bills are paid, all of them. I've also arranged for upgraded care, a private room, around-the-clock nursing, whatever she needs." Elena's throat tightened. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did, but that's not all." He set down his mug. "I'm offering you a job. A real one, not waiting tables. I need someone I can trust, someone who's outside the usual channels, someone the other families won't expect." "I don't understand." "I need an art consultant." He gestured at the paintings on the walls. "I collect. So do my associates. But I don't have time to authenticate pieces, research provenance, handle acquisitions. You have a degree in art history. You know the field. And after last night, the other families will assume you're already deep in my organization. Might as well make it official." Elena stared at him. "You want to hire me to look at paintings? Among other things, you'd also attend events with me, handle certain social obligations. Think of it as being a consultant. And companion?" "Companion?" The word hung in the air between them. "Not that kind of companion," he clarified quickly. "Unless you wanted—" He stopped himself. "What I mean is, you'd be seen with me. At dinners, galleries, charity events. The art world and my world overlap more than you'd think. Having someone like you by my side would be useful. Someone like me. Someone genuine. Someone good." His dark eyes searched her face. "Someone who makes me want to be better." Elena's heart stumbled. "You can't just say things like that." "Why not? It's true." He moved closer. "Elena, I know this is insane. I know I'm asking you to step into a world you never wanted to be part of. But I'm also offering you security. A salary that would make your old waitressing money look like pocket change. Protection. A purpose. He paused. And maybe, eventually, something more. Something more. I'm not going to pretend I don't feel something for you. I have, since I read your application. Since I watched you on your first day, nervous and determined. Since I saw you smile at a difficult customer and somehow make them smile back. He was close enough now that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. But I'm patient. I can wait. Right now, all I'm asking is that you... Stay. Let me keep you safe. Let me give you the life you deserve. Elena's mind was spinning. This was crazy. Completely, utterly insane. She should say no, should demand he let her go, should find a way to disappear and never look back. But then she thought about her mother's bills, paid in full. About the upgraded care, the private room. About how she'd been drowning in debt and exhaustion for months, and in one night, Dante Moretti had made it all go away. She thought about how he'd torn down a door to save her, how he'd carried her in his arms like she was precious, how he'd asked permission before touching her face, how he looked at her like she was something rare and beautiful, not just another employee. If I say yes, she said slowly, I need ground rules. Something like relief crossed his face. Name them. First, I need to see my mother. Today. I need to explain something. Not the truth, but something that won't worry her. Done. I'll take you myself. Second, I want to know what happened. To those men. To whoever sent them. I don't need details, but I need to know I'm not in danger anymore. Fair. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. 6 of the 8 men gave up the name before dawn. Marco Valentino sent them. He's a underboss in the Carboni family, trying to make a move on my territory. The other 2 held out until we brought in more persuasive methods. He looked up. Valentino is dead as of an hour ago. So is his boss, for allowing it. The Carboni family is falling apart as we speak, fighting over succession. You're safe. Elena absorbed this. 2 men dead because of her. An entire crime family in chaos. She should feel horror. Instead, she just felt protected. Third, she continued, if I'm going to work in art, I need access. Museums, galleries, auction houses. I need to be able to do the job properly. You'll have whatever you need. Unlimited budget, my name backing you, access to collections most people never see. He smiled. You might actually enjoy it. She might. God help her. She might actually enjoy working for the mob. And fourth, Elena took a deep breath. If I do this, if I stay, you have to promise me something. Anything. You have to promise that if I ever want to leave, if this becomes too much or too dangerous or I just can't do it anymore, you'll let me go. No revenge, no punishment, no making me disappear. I need to know I have a choice. The request hung in the air. Elena watched something shift in Moretti's expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. He was quiet for a long moment, and she wondered if she'd pushed too far, asked too much. Then he held out his hand. I promise. You'll always have a choice, Elena. Always. His eyes locked with hers. Do we have a deal? Elena looked at his outstretched hand. This was it. The moment where she decided to step fully into this world, to accept the protection and the danger and the complicated, intense man offering her both. She thought about being burned, being terrified, being seconds from death. She thought about Moretti's face when he'd seen her injuries, the cold rage in his voice when he'd ordered punishment for her captors. She thought about how he'd held her, careful and gentle despite all the violence he was capable of. Most of all, she thought about how, for the first time in months, she didn't feel like she was drowning. She felt like someone had thrown her a lifeline, even if that lifeline came with complications she couldn't begin to predict. Elena placed her hand in his. We have a deal. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong. Then, moving slowly enough that she could pull away if she wanted, he lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "Thank you," he murmured against her skin. "I won't let you regret this." 3 months later, Elena stood in front of a Rembrandt at a private showing, explaining the significance of the brushwork to a group of Moretti's associates. She wore a designer dress that cost more than her old car, and her mother was comfortable in the best hospice care money could buy, asking when she'd see her daughter's handsome new boyfriend again, because that's what Dante Moretti had become. It had happened gradually. Dinners that turned into long conversations about art and history and life. His hand at the small of her back at events, protective and possessive. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, like she was something infinitely precious. The night she'd kissed him first, unable to resist anymore, and he'd groaned against her mouth like he'd been waiting forever for permission. They kept it private. In public, she was his art consultant, his companion at events. In private, she was his Elena, and he was her Dante, and somehow, against all logic, they'd fallen in love. Now, as she finished her explanation of the Rembrandt and the crowd dispersed, Dante appeared at her side, sliding an arm around her waist. "Brilliant as always," he murmured. "You had them eating out of your hand." "They're terrified of you," she pointed out. "They'd listen to anyone you brought." "No, they respect you. There's a difference." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "The Carboni family's new boss sent a message. He wants to negotiate territory. And I'm inclined to listen. Things have been quiet since we took out Valentino. I'd like to keep it that way." His arm tightened around her. "Violence is bad for business, and bad for the people I care about." Elena leaned into him, feeling safe and cherished and impossibly lucky. Who knew the big bad Mafia boss was actually a softie? "Only for you." He turned her in his arms, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "Elena, I want to ask you something. Should I be worried? Maybe." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Elena's heart stopped. "I know it's fast," Dante said, opening the box to reveal a ring that probably cost more than a house. "I know your life would be easier if you found someone normal, someone safe. But I'm a greedy man, and I want you forever. I want you by my side at every event, in my bed every night, wearing my ring so everyone knows you're mine." He took her hand. "Marry me, Elena. Let me spend the rest of my life protecting you, spoiling you, and loving you the way you deserve." Elena looked at the ring, glittering in the gallery lights. Then she looked at Dante. This dangerous, complicated, surprisingly gentle man who'd torn down a door to save her, and then given her a whole new life. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slid the ring onto her finger, then kissed her with a passion that made her forget they were in a room full of people. When they finally broke apart, she was breathless and flushed and gloriously happy. "I love you," Dante said against her lips. "My Elena. My beautiful, brave Elena." "I love you too," she replied. "My terrifying, protective Mafia boss." He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "Those men who hurt you," he said suddenly. "I never told you what happened to them. The full story." "Dante, by morning all 8 had talked. They told me everything, who sent them, why, what they knew about my operations. And then they paid for what they did to you, 40 burns each, just like I promised." His eyes darkened. "But that wasn't enough. I wanted them to understand what they'd taken from me, the fear you'd felt, the pain. So I made sure they experienced all of it, slowly, until they begged for death." He said it calmly, like he was describing what he'd had for breakfast. And Elena, who once would have been horrified, simply nodded. "Good," she said. "They deserved it." Dante's smile was fierce and proud. "That's my girl." He kissed her again, and Elena kissed him back, her Mafia boss, her protector, her future husband. The man who'd seen burns on her arms and ordered terrible vengeance. The man who'd given her everything. She'd started as a waitress, just trying to save her mother. She'd ended up as the future wife of the most dangerous man in the city. And somehow, impossibly, she'd never been happier. As they left the gallery together, Dante's arm around her waist and his ring on her finger, Elena thought about that night in the warehouse. About the moment she'd thought she would die. About Dante exploding through that door like an avenging angel. "Thank you," she said suddenly. "For what?" "For saving me. For giving me this life. For loving me." Dante stopped, turning her to face him under the streetlights. "Elena, I'm the one who should be thanking you. You took a broken, violent man and gave him something to protect. Something precious and good and worth being better for." He cupped her face in his hands. "I'd burn down the whole world for you. I'd torture 1,000 men. I'd start a war with every family in this city." He kissed her forehead, soft and reverent. "You're mine now, forever. And I protect what's mine." Elena smiled, feeling fierce and treasured, and impossibly loved. "And I'm yours. Forever." "Forever," he agreed. And as they disappeared into the night, the city glittering around them, Elena knew she'd found something she'd never expected to find. Safety, purpose, love. All because she'd applied for a job waiting tables, and a dangerous man had decided she was worth saving. Those burns on her arms had faded to pale scars. But the love between them? That would last forever. But what Elena didn't know was that their happiness had painted a target on both their backs. It started with a phone call that came during their engagement party. 6 weeks after Dante had proposed, they'd gathered his inner circle and her few remaining friends at his penthouse to celebrate. Elena was laughing at something one of Dante's lieutenants had said, her engagement ring catching the light, when she saw his expression change. Dante had stepped away to take a call, and when he came back, his face was stone. "Elena." His voice cut through the music and conversation. "We need to go. Now." She knew better than to argue. Within minutes, they were in his car, speeding through the city streets with 3 escort vehicles. Dante's jaw was locked, his hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. "What happened?" Elena asked. "Your mother's hospice." His voice was rough. "There was an incident. She's fine, she's safe, but we need to get there." Elena's blood turned to ice. "What kind of incident?" "The kind where 3 armed men tried to enter her floor asking questions about you." The world tilted. Elena had been so careful. She visited her mother regularly, but always with security watching from a distance. She'd told her mother she was dating a wealthy businessman. Nothing more. She'd kept that part of her life separate, protected. How did they know? "I don't know yet." Dante's voice was deadly calm, the kind of calm that meant violence was coming. "But I'm going to find out." St. Mary's was lit up like a Christmas tree, police cars and Dante's men creating a perimeter around the building. Dante barely put the car in park before Elena was running for the entrance, her heels clicking on the pavement. Her mother's private room was on the 4th floor. Elena burst through the door to find her sitting up in bed, looking pale but unharmed. A nurse Elena recognized sat beside her, and 2 of Dante's security guards stood by the window. "Mom!" Elena rushed to her side, taking her frail hand. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine, sweetheart." Her mother's voice was weak but steady. "Just scared. These men came in asking about you, about where you lived, who you worked for. The nurses called security, and then these gentlemen arrived." She looked at Dante's guards. "They've been very kind." Dante entered behind Elena, and her mother's expression softened. Whatever else was happening, she genuinely liked him, thought he was good for her daughter. "Mr. Moretti," her mother smiled weakly. "I'm sorry to disrupt your evening." "Mrs. Castellano, you have nothing to apologize for." Dante moved to the other side of the bed. his presence somehow both commanding and gentle. "I'm just glad you're safe. Can you tell me anything about these men? What they looked like? What they said?" Elena's mother described them. 3 men in dark clothes, one with a Russian accent. They'd been calm at first, almost polite, asking if she knew where her daughter was living now, if she'd mentioned her employer. When the nurses had insisted they leave, one of them had pulled out a photograph. "It was of you, Elena." Her mother's hand tightened around her daughter's. "Of you and Dante, at some restaurant. You were holding hands across the table. The man said they just wanted to talk to you about your new boyfriend." She looked between them, confusion and fear in her eyes. "Who were they? Why would anyone care who you're dating?" Elena opened her mouth, but no words came. How could she explain? How could she tell her dying mother that her daughter had fallen in love with a mafia boss, that she was marrying into a world of violence and danger? Dante saved her. "Mrs. Castellano, I'm not just a businessman. I have connections that sometimes make me a target for people with bad intentions. Elena got caught up in that by being with me." He met the older woman's eyes steadily. "I should have been more careful. I should have protected her better, protected you better. That's my fault, and I'm going to fix it." "What do you mean, connections?" Her mother's gaze sharpened despite her illness. "What kind of business are you in?" "Mom," Elena started. "The kind that requires I be honest with you now." Dante pulled up a chair, sitting so he was at eye level with the dying woman. "I run an organization that operates outside the law. I'm not going to pretty it up or lie to you. Your daughter fell in love with a dangerous man, and that puts her at risk. It puts you at risk. But I swear to you, on everything I am, that I will keep both of you safe. Elena is the most important thing in my world, which makes you important too." Elena watched her mother process this, saw the fear and understanding dawn in her eyes. For a long moment, the only sound was the beep of medical equipment. Then her mother spoke. "You love her? Truly?" "More than my own life." "And you'll protect her? No matter what it costs you?" "I'd burn the world down first." Her mother studied Dante's face, then looked at Elena. "You love him too. I can see it." Elena nodded, tears threatening. "I do. I know it's complicated. I know it's not what you wanted for me, but he makes me happy. He's given us so much. He's given us everything." Her mother squeezed her hand. "The bills are paid. I'm comfortable. I get to see my daughter." Smile again. I'd have to be blind not to realize something unusual was going on. She turned back to Dante. "I'm dying, Mr. Moretti. The doctors say I have maybe 2 months. All I care about is knowing my daughter will be taken care of after I'm gone. If you're the one who's going to do that, then I'm grateful, regardless of how you make your living." Dante's expression shifted, something almost vulnerable crossing his face. "You have my word. I'll take care of her for the rest of her life. Then we have an understanding." Her mother lay back against her pillows, suddenly exhausted. "Now please, find whoever those men were and make sure they don't come back." Oh, Dante would find them. Elena could see it in his eyes. They left her mother to rest, surrounded by more security than a head of state. In the elevator down, Dante was already on his phone, barking orders in rapid Italian. Elena caught words like Russian, photograph, and trace. "Who do you think sent them?" she asked when he hung up. "Someone who wants to hit me where it hurts." His arm came around her waist, protective and possessive. "Someone who's been watching us, taking pictures, planning. This wasn't random, Elena. This was calculated." They returned to the penthouse to find Dante's top lieutenants already assembled in his office. Elena had met them all over the past months: Marco, his second-in-command, Giovanni, who handled security, and Anthony, who managed intelligence. They all stood when she entered, showing her the respect due to their boss's future wife. "Tell me you have something," Dante said without preamble. Giovanni pulled up surveillance footage on the large screen. "We identified 2 of the 3 men from the hospice cameras. Yuri Volkov and Alexei Petrov. They're muscle for the Kozlov Bratva. Elena felt Dante go rigid beside her. The Russians? Are you sure? Positive. They've been in the city for 2 weeks. We have them on camera at 4 different locations, all properties you own or frequent. More images flashed on screen. The restaurant, the gallery where they'd been last week, even outside this building. They've been surveilling you both. Why? Dante's voice was ice. The Kozlovs and I have an understanding. We stay out of each other's territory. Had an understanding, Marco corrected. Viktor Kozlov died 3 days ago. Heart attack. His nephew Dmitri has taken over, and word is he wants to renegotiate all existing agreements. By threatening my fiancé's dying mother? Dante's hand moved to his jacket, where Elena knew he kept a gun. That's not renegotiation. That's a declaration of war. There's more. Anthony pulled up another image, the photograph the Russian had shown Elena's mother. They didn't just take this picture. They distributed it. Every major family in the city received a copy with a message. Moretti's weakness has a name. Elena felt sick. She'd known dating Dante came with risks, but seeing herself, weaponized like this, used as a target to hurt him, made her stomach turn. They're trying to provoke you, Giovanni said. Make you react emotionally instead of strategically. It's working. Dante's voice was deadly quiet. Set up a meeting with Dmitri. Tomorrow. Neutral ground. I want to hear what he has to say before I kill him. Dante. Elena touched his arm. He turned to her, and she saw the conflict in his eyes. The desire to unleash violence warring with the need to be smart, careful. For her. You can't just kill him, she said softly. If he's taken over the Bratva, that's the entire organization. Going to war with them would be necessary. They threatened you. They threatened your mother. They made you a target. His hand came up to cup her face. I told you I'd burn the world down for you. Did you think I was exaggerating? I think there's a difference between protecting me and starting a war that could get you killed. Elena held his gaze. I need you alive, Dante. That's how you protect me. By being here. She watched the words hit him, saw him struggle with the violent instinct to lash out versus the strategic mind that had kept him alive and in power for years. She's right, boss, Marco said quietly. This is what Dmitri wants. You react with immediate violence. You look unstable. The other families start wondering if they need to move against you before you become unpredictable. Dante's jaw clenched. Fine, we meet. We talk. But if I don't like what he has to say, if he so much as suggests he might come near Elena again, then we plan properly and take him apart piece by piece, Giovanni finished. But smart, not emotional. The meeting was set for the next evening at a restaurant that served as neutral ground, owned by the Irish, who had no stake in Italian-Russian conflicts. Elena insisted on going with him. Absolutely not, Dante said immediately. He's already targeted me. He's already seen me as your weakness. Elena stood her ground. If I hide, that confirms it. If I show up at your side, completely unafraid, what does that say? That you're insane, and I'm insane for allowing it. It says that I'm not some fragile thing he can use against you. It says we're a united front. Elena moved closer, placing her hands on his chest. You said I was your partner. Let me be your partner. Dante looked at her for a long moment. Then he called Giovanni over. If she comes, I want 15 men in that restaurant. Another 20 outside. Snipers on the surrounding buildings. She wears a vest under her dress, and she doesn't leave my side for a single second. Done, Giovanni agreed. The next evening, Elena dressed carefully in a black dress that accommodated the bulletproof vest underneath. She felt ridiculous, padded and stiff, but Dante's expression when he saw her was worth it. He looked at her like she was a warrior queen going into battle. You don't have to do this, he said one more time. Yes, I do. Elena adjusted his tie, an intimate gesture that felt defiant given the circumstances. We do this together. The restaurant was upscale Italian, ironically. They were shown to a private room where Dmitry Kozlov already waited with his own security detail. He was younger than Elena expected, maybe 35, with cold blue eyes and the kind of expensive suit that said new money trying to look like old money. Moretti. Dmitry stood, his gaze sliding to Elena with obvious interest. And this must be the famous fiancée. You're even more beautiful than your photographs. Elena felt Dante tense beside her. She squeezed his hand once, a reminder. Stay calm. Dmitry, I'm sorry for your loss. Dante's tone made it clear he wasn't sorry at all. Your uncle was a man of honor. I hope you plan to follow his example. Honor. Dmitry smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. My uncle's honor kept us locked in outdated agreements that limited our growth. I prefer progress. Progress like sending your men to threaten a dying woman in hospice? Elena spoke before Dante could, her voice cold. That's an interesting definition of progress. Dmitry's attention focused fully on her. Direct. I like that. Your fiancé has chosen well. He leaned back in his chair. The visit to your mother was simply reconnaissance, Miss Castellano. We needed to understand the situation. No harm was intended. No harm? Elena's voice rose slightly. You terrorized a woman with stage 4 cancer. You showed her pictures of her daughter as some kind of threat. You made her think her child was in danger. If that's your idea of reconnaissance, I'd hate to see what you consider an actual threat. Elena, Dante's hand tightened on hers, but she could hear something in his voice. Pride, maybe, or satisfaction that she was holding her own. No, let her speak. Dmitry studied her with new interest. You have spirit. That will serve you well in this life. I don't need your approval or your life advice, Elena said flatly. What I need is for you to explain what you want, so we can all stop playing games. Dmitry laughed, a genuine sound. You really didn't tell her, did you, Moretti? You didn't explain what my uncle's agreement with you cost the Bratva? Dante's silence was answer enough. 5 years ago, Dmitry explained, looking at Elena, your fiancé and my uncle drew new territory lines. Moretti got the docks, the construction contracts, the legitimate businesses. We got the sex trafficking and drug running, the dirty work that makes less money and draws more police attention. He leaned forward. Does that sound like a fair agreement to you? Elena's stomach turned. She'd known Dante was involved in crime, but hearing it laid out so bluntly, sex trafficking, drugs, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. That agreement, Dante said coldly, kept peace for 5 years. Kept both our families profitable and out of prison. Your uncle understood that. My uncle was old and cautious. I'm neither. Dmitry pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. New terms. We split the docks 50-50. You give us the construction contracts in the North End, and you pay us $10 million for our trouble. Or what? Dante didn't touch the folder. Or we continue to make your life uncomfortable. Your fiancée is lovely, but she's not the only leverage you have. You have associates, businesses, weak points. We can find them all. Dmitry's smile turned cruel. My uncle's way was to negotiate politely. My way is to take what I want. Elena watched Dante's face, saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. This was a test. Give in to Dmitry's demands, and every other family would smell weakness. Refuse, and Dmitry would follow through on his threats. Here's my counteroffer, Dante said quietly. You withdraw your men from my territory immediately. You publicly apologize for the incident at St. Mary's, and you accept the original agreement your uncle made, or I'll assume you're declaring war. War, Dmitry laughed. Over some docks and contracts? Over respect. Dante stood, pulling Elena up with him. Over the principle that agreements matter. Over the fact that you came into my city and threatened what's mine. His voice dropped to something terrifying. Your uncle understood that some lines shouldn't be crossed. You're about to learn that lesson the hard way. They were walking toward the door when Dmitri spoke again. Leaving so soon? I haven't told you the best part yet. Dante paused. Your wedding, Dmitri said casually. 3 months from now, yes? At the Cathedral of St. Catherine? I've already received my invitation. He smiled. It would be such a shame if something unfortunate happened on such a special day. So many people gathered in one place. So many opportunities for tragedy. Elena felt Dante's hand spasm around hers. This was it. The threat that would push him over the edge. She could feel the violence radiating off him. The barely controlled rage. She had to do something. Say something. You know what I think, Dmitri? Elena turned back, her voice clear and steady. I think you're scared. I think you know you can't win a straight fight against Dante, so you're trying to use me. Use fear. Use anything except actual power. She took a step toward him. But here's what you don't understand. I chose this life. I chose him. And I'm not some fragile thing that scares easily. I survived being kidnapped and tortured before I ever knew what Dante really was. I survived watching men burn for hurting me. Do you really think a vague threat about my wedding is going to make me run? The room was silent. Even Dimitri's guards looked uncomfortable. So here's what's going to happen, Elena continued. You're going to honor your uncle's agreement. You're going to leave my mother, my wedding, and me out of your business dealings. And in exchange, Dante won't. Do what every instinct is telling him to do right now, which is kill you where you sit. She smiled, cold and sharp. That's called mercy, Dmitri. You should take it. For a long moment, Dmitri just stared at her. Then he looked at Dante. She really is something special, isn't she? She is. Dante's voice was pure pride. Which is why I'd kill every single person in the Bratva if you threaten her again. Not because I'm emotional, because she's right. You're testing the wrong man. He pulled Elena close to his side. You have 24 hours to decide. Honor the agreement or face the consequences. This time when they left, no one stopped them. In the car, Elena's hands started shaking. The adrenaline that had kept her sharp and brave was draining away, leaving her cold and scared. Hey, Dante pulled her into his arms. You were magnificent. I was terrified. You were perfect. He kissed her forehead. Do you know what you just did? You backed down a Bratva boss without firing a single shot. You protected both of us. What if he doesn't take the deal? Then we go to war. But it will be from a position of strength, because you showed him we're not afraid. Dante tilted her face up. I love you. God, Elena, I love you so much. She kissed him, pouring all her fear and love and relief into it. When they broke apart, she asked what he said about the original agreement, about sex trafficking and drugs. Is that true? Dante's expression shuddered. Yes. And you're okay with that? With them doing those things? No, but I can't control what the Bratva does in their territory. I can only control mine. He met her eyes. I don't touch that business, Elena. I never have. Drugs, trafficking, that's a line I won't cross. But I can't stop others from crossing it without going to war with every family in the city. It wasn't a good answer, but it was an honest one. I need to think about this, Elena said quietly. I understand. Dante's voice was heavy. Take all the time you need. But she didn't get time. 2 hours later, Giovanni called with news. Dmitri Kozlov had been found dead in his apartment, 3 bullets in his chest. The Bratva was in chaos, with 4 different factions fighting for control, and someone had spray-painted a message on the wall in Dmitri's blood. Touch Moretti's bride and die. Dante swore when he heard. I didn't order this. I know, Giovanni said over the phone. but someone did it in your name. Maybe one of our younger guys trying to prove himself, or maybe someone trying to frame you. Either way, the Bratva thinks you broke the truce. They're going to retaliate, Dante said. Almost certainly. We're locking down all your properties, increasing security everywhere. But boss, Giovanni paused, you need to move up the wedding or postpone it. Having it in 3 months gives them too much time to plan something. Elena listened to this, her mind racing. Move up the wedding. Or postpone it, hide, let fear dictate their lives. She thought about her mother, dying in that hospice bed with maybe 2 months to live. About how much her mother wanted to see her married, settled, happy. About the dress already ordered, the venue booked, the life she'd planned with Dante. Move it up, she said suddenly. Both men looked at her. Move up the wedding. This weekend. Just close family and friends. Elena grabbed Dante's hand. I want my mother there. I want to marry you before anything else can happen. No more waiting, no more threats. No more letting other people control our lives. Elena, it's too soon, too dangerous, Dante protested. Everything about us is dangerous. That's never going to change. She squeezed his hand. But I love you, and I want to be your wife. So let's do it. This weekend. Small ceremony, maximum security, and we stop letting people like Dimitri make us afraid. Dante looked at her like she'd hung the moon. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He kissed her, fierce and claiming. Then we're getting married this weekend. Giovanni, make it happen. Cathedral of St. Catherine, Saturday, noon. Guest list of 50 maximum, every single one of them vetted. Security like the president is visiting. And find out who killed Dimitri before someone blames us for starting a war we didn't start. The next 3 days were chaos. Elena's mother was transported to the cathedral in a medical van, accompanied by nurses and enough security to invade a small country. The dress was rushed. The flowers were last minute. But when Elena walked down that aisle on Saturday, her mother watching from a wheelchair in the front row, and Dante waiting at the altar looking at her like she was his salvation, none of it mattered. You came into my life when I needed saving, Elena said during her vows, her voice steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. But you're the one who saved me. From debt, from fear, from a life of just surviving. You gave me purpose and partnership and love, and I promise to stand by your side through everything that comes, no matter how dangerous or complicated. Because that's what we do. We face it together. Dante's vows were simpler. I was a violent man living a violent life until I read 3 sentences on an application. I need this job to save my mother's life. I'll work harder than anyone you've ever hired. Please, give me a chance. In that moment, you became mine to protect. And I've been falling in love with you every day since. You're my light in a dark world, Elena. My redemption. And I swear I'll spend every day of my life earning the gift of your love. They were pronounced husband and wife as the sun streamed through stained glass windows, and when Dante kissed her, Elena felt safe and loved and exactly where she belonged. The reception was small, intimate, held in a secure location with guards stationed at every entrance. Elena's mother was radiant, despite her illness, holding court from her wheelchair and telling embarrassing stories about Elena's childhood. Dante's men toasted the couple with genuine warmth, and for a few hours, the danger and violence of their world faded away. 3 weeks later, Elena's mother passed peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by the best care money could buy, and with the knowledge that her daughter was loved and protected. Elena grieved, but without the desperate fear she'd carried for so long. Her mother had died comfortable, pain-free, and happy. That was all anyone could ask for. And 6 months after that, Giovanni's investigation finally bore fruit. Dmitri Kozlov hadn't been killed on Dante's orders. He'd been killed by his own second-in-command, who'd wanted to take over the Bratva, and had decided framing Moretti was the fastest way to eliminate competition. When the truth came out, the Bratva's new leader publicly apologized and reaffirmed the original agreement. Peace, for now. Elena stood in the penthouse, her hand resting on the slight swell of her stomach, watching the city lights. Dante came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "Thinking about something?" he asked. "About how strange life is. A year ago, I was drowning in debt and fear, just trying to keep my mother alive one more day. Now I'm married to the most dangerous man in the city, living in a penthouse, and pregnant with his child." "Our child," Dante corrected, his hand covering hers on her stomach. "And you're not just married to him. You're his equal, his partner, the woman who backed down a Bratva boss and demanded to move up our wedding in the middle of a potential war." He turned her to face him. "You're the bravest person I know, Elena Moretti." She smiled at the name. Elena Moretti. A year ago, it would have terrified her. Now it felt right. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you more." Dante kissed her, soft and sweet. "Thank you for saying yes, for staying, for choosing this life with me." "Thank you for tearing down a door to save me," Elena replied, "for being gentle when I needed it, and fierce when I needed that too. For being mine." "Always yours," he promised. And as they stood there together, watching the city that had brought them together, Elena knew that she'd found something rare and precious. Not safety. Their life would never be truly safe. But partnership. Love. A dangerous man who'd become her protector, her husband, her home. She'd been burned, tortured, threatened, and targeted. But she'd survived it all and found happiness on the other side. And if anyone tried to threaten that happiness again, well, they'd learn the same lesson Dmitri and his predecessors had learned. Elena Moretti wasn't some fragile thing to be used as leverage. She was a force in her own right. And she had a very protective, very dangerous husband who'd burn the world down before he let anyone hurt her again. But more than that, she'd burn it down herself. Because that's what you did for love. You fought for it. You protected it. You chose it every single day, no matter how complicated or dangerous it got. And Elena? She'd choose Dante Moretti every single day for the rest of her life.